ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to this webinar on Global Metals Market Outlook 2025. I am Beena Verma, former editor of Minerals and Metals Review, and someone who has seen the growth of the metal sector from close quarters. I'm honored to serve as your host for this insightful and engaging webinar. Before we proceed, I would like to take a moment to introduce our Metal Trends, a newly launched platform dedicated to delivering in depth analysis of the global and Indian metal market, drivers that shape the trends as well as opportunities and challenges that need to be overcome. Metal Trends is co promoted by two of us, Mr. G. Chandrashekhar, who's a highly respected senior journalist, economist, and policy commentator who provides policy inputs for the government. He serves as independent director as corporate boards and is an independent member of SEBI CDAC. I am privileged to join him in his venture. Metal Trends seeks to provide the sector stakeholders and industry professionals with the periodic updates on metal market dynamics, drivers, and outlook. Our team is poised to grow with the addition of industry veterans and experts. And now let me introduce the esteemed panelist joining us today, Mr. L. Pugazanthi, fondly known as Mr. Pug in the industry, Executive Director of the Indian Lead Zinc Development Association and past President of the Indian Institute of Metals. He has been a strong supporter of the initiative and we appreciate his valuable contributions. A very warm welcome to you, Mr. Pugza. Mr. Jitendra Shah, President of the Federation of Association of Maharashtra and former President of MASMA. Thank you, Mr. Shah, for your trust in this platform and your unwavering support. Welcome to the forum. Mr. Sandeep Jain, President of Bombay Metal Exchange and Managing Director, Laurel Wires Limited. We deeply appreciate your endorsement of this webinar and the support of BME in strengthening the forum. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Jain, and a very warm welcome to you. Mr. Sunil Madhya, founder and CEO of Metalex, whose prompt tech and media support has been instrumental in the success of this webinar. We are grateful for your partnership and we are delighted to have you all joining us from near and far. Today's session will address the key issues that will help to navigate the metal industry, that is the global and domestic supply-demand dynamics, metal prices trends and market volatility, policy updates and the impact of Union Budget 2025. Impact on manufacturers, traders, consumers, importers and exporters will also be discussed. Implications of US tariff policies under the Trump administration is also a part of the discussions. We encourage you to actively participate and ask questions and share your perspectives as well. Let's make this webinar as engaging, insightful with interactive discussions. Without further delay, it is my honor to invite our keynote speaker, Mr. G. Chandrashekhar, to share his experts' insights on the global metal industry Outlook 2025. Thank you, and let's begin. Over to you, Mr. Chandrashekhar. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Dina Ben, for this wonderful welcome speech. I hope I'm audible. I must mention, I must compliment Beena Verma for this excellent initiative that she has taken, establishing these metals trends. I see a great future for this sector, primarily because India's economic growth over the next 20, 25, 30 years is going to be very significantly metals driven. It is driven and particularly metals driven. And there, I believe, is an opportunity to share knowledge, share strategies, and update market participants about what's happening around the world. I hope we are able to bring new insights into the market performance. We want to look at familiar things from unfamiliar angles and try and give newer perspective to all our colleagues, our associates, our participants, etc. And today, let me start my presentation with how do I start this? Yes, I'm here. Here we go. Is it visible? Is the screen visible?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I'll go full screen. All right. Okay, so the topic is my topic is industrial metals outlook in an evolving landscape. All of us know that the global policy context has been becoming increasingly complex in recent years with huge amount of challenges. It actually started with Trump's previous term, 2017, 18, 19. Then we had 20 and 21, we had COVID related lockdowns. Come 22, then we continue to have this Russia-Ukraine war, and then the second war started. All this is making the global policy landscape increasingly complex. Countries actually don't know how to navigate this very complex global supply chains, changing supply chains, sanctions, protectionism, and all that. So very quickly, before we go into what is in store for us for 2025, I just thought I will briefly mention what happened, recap what happened in 2024 when the global commodity markets faced huge headwinds or multiple risks. We had two wars, elevated levels of inflation, very high interest rates, slowing China growth. China is extremely important because China is the mover and shaker of the global commodity markets and certainly, of course, the global metals market. We also saw last year huge price volatility because of ever-changing supply and demand fundamentals, and more importantly, energy transition efforts. And when we talk of energy transition, the world's energy transition is going to be very substantially metals intensive, be it electric vehicles, be it solar panels, be it charging infrastructure, whatever. This energy transition is going to be highly metals intensive, and therefore there is hope, there is great opportunity for the metal sector to produce more, process more, consume more, trade more. Therefore, I think this is a sector which obviously is going to boom. And again, very quickly, last year was a year of two halves. A very strong price rise we saw on the LME. We had supply side disruptions, sanctions on Russian metal, particularly aluminum, as all of us know. But at the same time, we had very resilient demand growth, primarily because of our forays into renewable energy. All that supported metals prices, industrial metals prices in H1. But in H2, prices pulled back, again because of increased production, better supplies, surplus in the refined market, stock buildup, etc., etc. And therefore, this is a backdrop in which now we need to examine or crystal gaze into what's in store in 2025. Now, as an economist, my own view of the unfolding global economic landscape for 2025 is very clear. The forecast is for the global GDP growth to rise to 3.3% in 2025 versus 3.2%. This is not a big growth, but it's on the positive side, which is how we need to look at it. Now, interest rates will have to move lower, and due to moderating inflation, particularly the U.S. Fed actually is anchoring all these interest rate moves, and other emerging markets, other countries, including developed countries, actually follow the U.S. Fed in some manner. The U.S. Fed reduce interest rates. They would probably reduce interest rate once, definitely, hopefully twice this year, because US's inflation rates are likely to remain elevated, particularly after Trump has become the president. But that's a different conversation. I'll just come to that a little later. But interest rates will have to move down. There is no doubt at all because inflation is moderating, and that is likely to benefit the emerging market economies. China, China is most important for all of us from an industrial metals perspective. China has been facing huge challenges, particularly in the construction sector, the housing sector. All of us know 2024 was not a good year for their housing sector, and that challenge is likely to extend to 2025. And we all know China has been giving a series of stimulus packages, and those stimulus measures will continue in 2025, is my view, and that will possibly allow a small improvement in domestic consumption. Yet China's growth, we have seen China grow at 10, 11, 12%, but that was 20 years ago. So China's growth rate is very substantially mellowed down, slowed down. For 2025, the expectation is China's GDP growth rate will be 4.5% versus 4.7% in 2024. Yet, I must mention 4.5% growth on a GDP value of $18 trillion is still a fairly sizable number. So what is 4.5% of 18 trillion is close to seven or in excess of $750 billion. I think that's actually a fairly large, even from an Indian perspective. For China slowing, but yet that incremental GDP value is going to be quite substantial for them. Now, having said all that, we have to now look at what I call the Trump effect. Now, Trump and we know Trump, we have experienced Trump in the past 2018, 19, 20, etc. Now, Trump has a 3-3-3 formula. He is targeting 3% GDP growth. He is targeting 3% fiscal deficit by the end of his term, that is 4 years from now. And of course, he's very keen that the US produces 3 million barrels a day extra oil. And that's very important, primarily because the US is already a very large producer of oil, probably in excess of 10 million barrels a day, maybe 11 million barrels a day. He wants them to produce 3 million barrels extra. That target may not be achieved, but even if the US were to produce even just 1 million barrels a day extra oil, I think the world, there'll be a glut of oil in the world. So that's something we need to bear in mind. The next one is Trump's threat of tariffs. Obviously, he is threatening all countries, including Canada, Mexico, China, and of course, India. Is not going to exempt India. Therefore, the threat of tariff, if they are implemented fully, if they are implemented vigorously, is most likely to result in supply chain disruption. Please wind back 4, 5, 6 years. 2018-19, we saw a trade war break out between the US and China that resulted in supply chain disruptions. When the US imposed the tariffs on Chinese goods, China imposed retaliatory tariffs on a number of US imports from the US that led to a trade war. Even India was not exempt. India's steel and aluminum export to the US were subject to tariff. And in turn, we imposed retaliatory tariffs on a number of commodities that the US exports, like dry fruits, almonds, their apple, Washington apple, etc., etc. All that, lentils and all that. I remember. Okay, therefore, that trade war, in my view, will not be or may not be as fierce as it was in 2018-19, the current trade war. Trade war will break out, but it may not be as fierce as what it was 6 years ago. But more likely, Mr. Trump is using the threat of tariffs as a bargaining chip with countries like Canada and Mexico, China, etc. But more important is that Trump is not a believer in climate change. So if he is not a believer in climate change, what happens to all those commitments given by countries for energy transition efforts? I think this is a big question. And the next one is sanctions on Russia. he's trying to give Putin an honorable exit out of the Russia-Ukraine war. And there is a very strong possibility that sanctions on Russia, even if they are not lifted, they may be eased. It will have a certain implications on the energy market and certainly on the metals market, particularly aluminium. For all these are likely to impact the market. So I've been also told I must speak. Maybe part of my speech should be in Hindi. तो मैं हिंदी में जरा बात करने दीजिए मुझे. मेरा हिंदी वैसे बहुत बढ़िया हिंदी नहीं है, बम्बईया हिंदी में ही बात करूंगा मैं, बट कोशिश करता हूं मैं. स्टील एंड एल्यूमिनियम का क्या इम्प्लीकेशन है जब हमारे ट्रम्प साहब टैरिफ लगा दिया उन्होंने, तो एक 25% की जो टैरिफ है ऑन स्टील एंड एल्यूमिनियम, उसका तो काफी असर पड़ने का संभावना है. तो मगर ये भी आप देखिए, हमें देखना चाहिए एल्यूमिनियम और स्टील का जो व्यापार है वो सिर्फ 3% है. वर्ल्ड ट्रेड इन मेटल्स, जिसमें ये एल्यूमिनियम और स्टील का जो विश्व बाजार में जो व्यापार होता है सिर्फ 3% है. और इसके उसके अंदर भी एक्सपोर्ट टू द यूएस सिर्फ 0.25% 0.25% ऑफ वर्ल्ड ट्रेड. यानी कि यूएस का जो भूमिका है एज एन इम्पोर्टर इन मेटल्स, पर्टिकुलरली एल्यूमिनियम एंड स्टील, तो काफी बहुत छोटा है उनका मार्केट शेयर. तो ये जो टैरिफ अभी ट्रम्प ने बात की है, दिस इज नॉट अ गेम चेंजर, इज नॉट गोइंग टू make a very big difference to the global steel and aluminium market in my opinion. मगर कनाडा का ऊपर इसका असर पड़ेगा क्योंकि कनाडा is the most exposed supplier as far as these metals are concerned, as far as steel is concerned. Therefore, there will be an impact on Canada, but not much impact on other countries. Impact on China काफी मामूली होगा, नेग्लिजिबल होगा, क्योंकि यूएस पहले से ही 47.5% टैरिफ लगा दिया है उन्होंने चाइनीज स्टील और 32.5% ऑन चाइनीज एल्यूमिनियम. तो अभी इंक्रीमेंटल इम्पैक्ट ऑफ अभी इसके ऊपर भी एक ज्यादा हायर टैरिफ, even if the US imposes higher tariffs, the incremental impact will be very very small. और हम देख रहे थे लास्ट ईयर 2024 में चाइना का जो एक्सपोर्ट था, मेटल एक्सपोर्ट टू द यूएस, सिर्फ $2.5 बिलियन का था. तो इट्स नॉट अ बिग ट्रेड. Therefore, ये जो स्टील और एल्यूमिनियम वाला टैरिफ कोई बड़ा असर चाइना का ऊपर तो नहीं होगा, मगर इम्पैक्ट होगा और एक बड़ा इम्पैक्ट होगा स्टील पर. एल्यूमिनियम और स्टील हम दो अलग अलग कमोडिटीज मेटल्स को देखेंगे तो एक टैरिफ स्टील पर ज्यादा असर पड़ेगा और एल्यूमिनियम पर बहुत मामूली असर होगा, क्योंकि स्टील जो है या टिपिकली स्टील प्राइसेस आर डिटरमाइंड लोकली रादर देन एन इंटरनेशनल बेंचमार्क. एल्यूमिनियम के लिए इंटरनेशनल बेंचमार्क है, स्टील के लिए इंटरनेशनल बेंचमार्क नहीं है, तो इट इज मोर और लेस डिटरमाइंड लोकली एंड देयरफॉर दैट विल हैव एन इम्पैक्ट. और जैसे द यूएस applies tariffs on steel import, so local steel prices in the US will increase, and that will have a certain impact. और हम let's see those numbers, ये आंकड़े हैं. यूएस का स्टील इंपोर्ट जो है 1/3 ऑफ टोटल डोमेस्टिक प्रोडक्शन, 1/3 दे इंपोर्ट, और जिसके अंदर 1/3 में जो 25% है वो कनाडा से आता है. एंड देयरफॉर इसका मतलब है कि यूएस में इन द डोमेस्टिक मार्केट steel prices are likely to rise in the near term, which is very important. Magar US also has a lot of spare capacity, or therefore higher prices jari rahenge for several months or several quarters, then it will incentivize higher domestic production. क्या ये होगा या नहीं होगा अभी कहना मुश्किल है, but we need to wait and watch, क्योंकि this situation is still evolving. मगर इसका एक असर, जो टैरिफ का असर हमें दिखाई देगा जरूर, कि टैरिफ्स के वजह से यूएस में इन्फ्लेशन रेट कम नहीं होगा, दे विल रिमेन फेयरली हाई. और जैसे इन्फ्लेशन रेट उच्च स्तर में रहता है। यूएस फेडरल रिजर्व का रेट कट इतना आसानी से, इतना जल्दी रेट कट होगा नहीं। इट विल बी क्वाइट मॉडरेटेड, क्योंकि उनका जो रेट कट का जो पॉलिसी डिसीजन है, इट इज सब्सटैंशियली डेटा ड्रिवन। तो इफ डेटा सजेस्ट हाई हाई इन्फ्लेशन, तो उनका जो रेट कट का जो साइकिल है वो काफी धीमी गति से चलेगा। तो ये सब के वजह से जरूर हम वी कैन एक्सपेक्ट यूएस डॉलर काफी मजबूत रहेगा। अभी भी मजबूत है, और आगे जाकर के इस साल में 2025 में डॉलर मजबूत रहने का संभावना ज्यादा है। और जैसे डॉलर मजबूत रहता है, उसका असर हम जानते हैं एमर्जिंग मार्केट करेंसीज पे क्या होगा। ओके। और अभी स्टील के बाद एल्यूमिनियम के बारे में जब हम बात करेंगे, एल्यूमिनियम प्राइसेस एज आई सेड अर्लियर मे नॉट बी अफेक्टेड मच, क्योंकि अमेरिका के वजह से नहीं, चीन चीन तो एक खास और अहम भूमिका चीन का है एल्यूमिनियम मार्केट में, क्योंकि चाइना इज अ कंट्री दैट मैटर्स फॉर द ग्लोबल एल्यूमिनियम मार्केट, क्योंकि चाइना शेयर ऑफ वर्ल्ड एल्यूमिनियम कंजम्पशन 60% चीन का जो मार्केट शेयर है, और यूएस का सिर्फ 8% है। पर यूएस में टैरिफ भी लग गया, तो उसका कोई बड़ा असर हमें दिखाई नहीं देगा ऑन दी एल्यूमिनियम मार्केट। मगर इफ चाइनीज इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटी स्लोज डाउन, चीन ने तो काफी बहुत कई बार स्टिमुलस पैकेज दिया है, मगर ये स्टिमुलस पैकेज ओवर ए पीरियड ऑफ टाइम वो फीका पड़ जाएगा, इट विल फेड, देयर इज नो डाउट एट ऑल। तो जैसे चीन का इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटी स्लो होता है, क्योंकि उनका स्टिमुलस पैकेज फीका पड़ जाएगा, इट इज क्वाइट इनएविटेबल, इट्स क्वाइट नेचुरल। तो एल्यूमिनियम प्राइसेस में एक एक देयर इज अ चांस फॉर एल्यूमिनियम प्राइसेस to decline by about 10% during 2025 is what I'm thinking. और हमारा देश में हमारा फंडामेंटल्स अच्छा है। हमारा करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट कम होते जा रहा है, फिस्कल डेफिसिट कम होते जा रहा है, हमारा क्रेडिट ग्रोथ बढ़ रहा है। तो ये सब जो हमारे फंडामेंटल्स है, हमारा इकोनॉमी को काफी मजबूत स्तर पे रखेगा। अवर कंजम्पशन विल बी सब्सटेंशियली सपोर्टेड। और हमारा देश का जो एक्सपोजर है, डायरेक्ट एक्सपोर्ट ऑफ स्टील टू द यूएस काफी रिलेटिवली लो, जस्ट अबाउट 4% ऑफ आवर टोटल आउटपुट, एंड देयरफॉर ये कोई बड़ा असर हमारा हमारा देश का स्टील एक्सपोर्ट पर नहीं होगा। मगर हमारा आवर ओन डोमेस्टिक कंजम्पशन डिमांड इज ग्रोइंग वेरी रैपिडली। पिछले 3 साल में मैं देख रहा हूँ 10-12% हमारा डिमांड बढ़ चुका है। एंड देयरफॉर मगर एक खतरा भी है, एक्सक्यूज मी, एक खतरा भी है, इसमें एक खतरा है। वो क्या खतरा है कि जिस देश यूएस को ज्यादा स्टील एक्सपोर्ट करते हैं, उनका ऊपर टैरिफ लग गया, तो दे विल प्रोबेबली ट्राई एंड डाइवर्ट देयर गुड्स टुवर्ड्स इंडिया। ओके। एंड चाइना का पास तो काफी ज्यादा बड़ा एक्सपोर्ट सरप्लस मैं देख रहा हूँ 2025 में। देयरफॉर हमारा देश में इंपोर्ट बढ़ने का संभावना भी है। ऑन प्राइमरी एल्यूमिनियम हमारा एक्सपोर्ट है लगभग 40% ऑफ डोमेस्टिक आउटपुट, मगर एक्सपोर्ट टू द यूएस 6 से 8% है। देयरफॉर हमारे एल्यूमिनियम प्रोड्यूसर्स, एक्सपोर्टर्स विल फेस मोर टैरिफ इम्पैक्ट देन स्टील प्रोड्यूसर्स। और मगर वी आर एक्चुअली इंडिया इज अ लो कॉस्ट एल्यूमिनियम प्रोड्यूसर। हमारा बहुत बढ़िया क्वालिटी है बॉक्साइट रिजर्व्स का, तो हम काफी कॉस्ट कॉम्पिटिटिव है इन द ग्लोबल मार्केट। Therefore, this will act as a cushion to face competition from any oversupply situation. मेरा अनुमान में the situation is still evolving. क्या बोलते हैं, अभी पिक्चर बाकी है। तो आगे जाकर के 2-3 महीने में हमें हमें पता लगेगा क्या होता है। द सिचुएशन विल क्रिस्टलाइज इन 2 or 3 months। एंड मेटल स्ट्रेंड्स के तरफ से मैं आपको बताना चाहता हूँ, विल कीप यू अपडेटिंग फ्रॉम टाइम टू टाइम। ये हमारा पहला, दिस इज अ फर्स्ट अटेम्प्ट, एंड वी विल कीप यू पोस्टेड फ्रॉम टाइम टू टाइम। हमारे पास काफी कुछ आइडियाज है। We want to do a lot of training, awareness, education, and bring new insights into the market. And this is our plan in the metal strand. With this, with this, let me say thank you very much. एक सिर्फ disclaimer 1 मिनट के लिए बोलता हूँ, आधा मिनट. I am not a trader. मैं व्यापारी नहीं हूँ. I am not in any trade. I don't hold any trading position. तो एक disclaimer मैं हर टाइम देता हूँ. Good luck. God bless you all. Thank you. Meena,
Thank you,
Meena
Mr.
Ben,
Chandrasekhar
over to
ji.
you. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chandrasekhar ji. Your presentation was truly insightful and highly informative. I know lots goes into making such an enlightening presentations, but all attendees will agree with me. Your expertise, passion in the subject has made it exceptional. And it was so absorbing that I lost the track of the time. But yes, we will be certainly extending few minutes because we have some questions coming up from our attendees. But let me tell you that questions we can answer once all the presentations are through.